من نفوسنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المأسومين المظلومين واللعنة الله على أعدائهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. وصلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا حجة الله يا ابن الحسن يا صاحب العصر والزمان. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. My dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. It's good to see you all again. I know it's been some time, forgive me. There was a mixture of COVID and a holiday and Sha'baniya celebrations and all sorts. So it has been a bit of time, but my love to you all, especially during these blessed days of Sha'ban, this preparation before we head towards the greatest month of the year, arguably. Some have different narrations on this, but one of the greatest months of the year, at least we can call it. But in particular, during the month of Sha'ban, we obviously celebrate absolute legends in life. The Imam alayhim salam, 4 of them we're honored to celebrate. Even the daughter, Sayyidah Sukaina alayhi salam, even Ali al-Akbar alayhi salam. It's like a Karbala heroes special month. And with thank you. And with the one who will avenge that blood that was spilt in Karbala as well, our awaited Savior. It's a very joyous month for us, but it's a month whereby, hopefully, through all of these celebrations, we're now inspired. And we're now inspired to start the journey that, inshallah, begins for most of us probably on Sunday, inshallah, which will, inshallah, be the first of the holy month of Ramadan. And I put a poll out on Instagram earlier today. I don't know if any of you guys saw it. Maybe, I don't know if any of you guys have Instagram. But I'm just going to ask you to do this. If you can all put your hands up. I know that's like a big ask. But just all put your hands up for a second. Just and keep it up. It's not difficult, right? Just keep your hand up. Okay. Leave your hand up. Leave your hand up if you've never, ever, ever before Shahr Ramadan felt a little bit like, oh, I'm not really looking forward to it 100%. So keep your hand up if you've always been like, I love it. Or put your hand back down if you're like, nah, in reality, I'm kind of not looking forward to it too much. And it's a crazy reality, right? I put the poll out and I asked, and I'll see what the results are. I'll give you the live results now. So I asked the question, do you feel a bit nervous or less excited than others seem to be about Shahr Ramadan? And the result at the moment is, just loading up. Oh no, that's the wrong one. There we go. 77% said yes. So 77% agreed with you guys. That there is this kind of niggling feeling before Shahr Ramadan, whilst everyone's getting so excited and everyone's sending you messages and everyone's kind of asking this rhetorical question of like, amazing, right? Shahr Ramadan's around the corner, subhanAllah, I can't wait. And you feel pressured to say, yeah, honestly, I can't wait. But deep down, a lot of us are like, honestly, I could really wait. I could really do with another week. I could really not fast for 30 days. I could really, And I always, people always make the joke, but I always find it hilarious. And I think we saw it when we went in Asda like 2 months ago, right? That Asda were already prepared for Shahr Ramadan with all their stalls out. We were like, oh, is Shahr Ramadan coming? Like, for us, we don't even know. But for the commercial guys, they know. They're prepared, right? But for us, the reality is, for a vast majority of us, there feels to be a bit of a guilt trip when it comes to Shahr Ramadan. That if you say to that forward that's sent to you from your uncle, I wish you a pleasant Shahr Ramadan, I bet you're so excited, I can't wait. If you were to reply and be like, honestly, I'm not looking forward to it that much. He'd be like, what? Like spiritual shame almost. How dare you say this? But deep down, you start to see it after day 1, 2, 3, 4. People complaining about sehri, people complaining that they're tired, people complaining this. In reality, it's not that straightforward, perhaps. And it's obviously designed to be that way. But what I wanted to try and do is maybe just take a step back and look at this month in a slightly more objective view. And this is obviously with not the guidance of myself, with Sheikh Panahian. If you have time to read a book that is literally like 40 pages, literally that thin, that's why I brought it, just to show you. You can get it on Amazon Prime, it'll be with you tomorrow or the day after. You can just about read it for the first day of Shahr Ramadan. And I think it's a really worthwhile investment just to do it. Just to get yourself into the mood, inshallah. And this will be a bit of an introduction as to how he tries to help us look at this holy month in a different lens. Because it can be a bit daunting. And I was just discussing it with my wife. It's like, yeah, it's going to be tough this year. Everyone says it. For some reason, every year is going to be tough. No year's ever easy. You'll never hear someone say, Shahr Ramadan, this is going to be a breeze. Everyone says, even in winter, it's going to be tough, man. It's going to be tough. What do you mean it's going to be tough? You know, it's incredible. If you start something with that attitude, I'm not one of those people that says, therefore it's going to be tough. But what I will say is, you're already looking at it not in an objective way. Now, if we're taught to look at it in a pessimistic way, fine. But what we're going to discover, inshallah, today is just how objective this holy month is meant to be, in the way that we perceive it, in the way that we see it, in the way that we experience it, as per the guidance and wording of our Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad wa ajil faraj. So, have any of you guys heard the phrase banquet or the word banquet associated with Shahr Ramadan? No? Yes? No? So, yeah, in some occasions we'll hear the word banquet associated with that. This month of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a banquet for you. Now, question, and again this is going to be a hands up question. Hands up if you think this word banquet is just something that speakers or poets describe this month of Ramadan. If you just think it's a nice way to describe it. And leave your hands down if you think it's hadith or Quran. So hands up if you think this word banquet to describe Shahr Ramadan is just poetic and nice and loving. Or hands down if you think it's Quranic and hadith. Poetic? Unsure? Make a decision. The worst thing is that you're going to get it wrong. Okay, so you're saying it's Quran and hadith. You're saying? Yeah, that's fine. We'll go into it. So you think Quran and hadith? Poetic? Hadith? Poetic? Hadith. Okay. So interestingly, it is from hadith, from our Holy Prophet. Okay? So when I used to hear this, I was like, they describe this month of Ramadan as a banquet. I can tell you one thing. If I'm invited to a banquet, I'm eating. I'm not eating. I'll tell you that much, right? So why is it this concept of a banquet comes forward? Who's brought it about? Because it's a very deliberate word that is used, and it has a lot of connotations. When you think of a banquet, it's a very illustrative thing. Like, it's very royal. It's very well laid out. It's almost like those weddings that you'll never ever get invited to, but one day you think you will, right? It's just not in our community to hold like a banquet. It's just a bit much, right? Or sometimes you're invited to a banqueting hall. Oh, this looks fancy. Then you turn up and it's just like, one of the uncles who's bought like a house or something. It's a bit underwhelming. So it's called a banquet. So if we look at where this word is used, who used it, we can now then start to derive how we should see this holy month. So, as mentioned in that introduction, it is from our Holy Prophet, and this is in the very famous sermon that he gives just at the end of Sha'ban, preceding Shahr Ramadan, if I've got that correct, where he's reported to say, هُوَ الشَّهْرُ الدُّعِيتُمْ فِيهِ إِلَىٰ ضِيَافَةِ اللَّهِ. You have been invited to God's banquet this month. Now, as you guys have known, over the last almost half year, we've got to know each other. I'm very weird and wacky with my ideas about how we try and portray our faith, right? But could you imagine if you go to your neighbors now, or if the committee of the center were to now, to all of the members, alongside their membership packs, or alongside their calendar, or alongside their voting slips, sent a little card that said, you've been invited to God's banquet this month, signed the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Imagine receiving that through your envelope, through your postbox. You've been invited to God's banquet this month. How could anyone look at that pessimistically? Sadiq, you've been invited to God's banquet this month. And my first reply is, seriously? It's going to be so tough this year. That wording doesn't quite work, does it? You wouldn't reply to that saying, it's going to be tough this year. What do you mean? God's banquet is going to sort you right out. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, you're going to love it. Why are you saying it's going to be difficult? Why are you saying it's going to be horrible? So you can see how a vision already has just been warped just by this very line. So this is in the Sha'baniyah sermon from the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And as we know, وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَى. The Holy Prophet does not speak out of desire, nor out of emotion, nor out of whim. Anything that he does is wahyun yuha. It is divine revelation. And we use this when we, for example, we talk about Lady Fatima alayhi salam, Fatima bid'atu minni. When he says that Fatima is a part, reported to say Fatima is a part of me, this isn't just some kind of, emotional thing for his daughter. He's saying, no, she is part of my very essence. Obedience of me is obedience to her. Pleasing me is pleasing her, vice versa, right? So in the same way, when the Holy Prophet says you have been invited to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's banquet this month, that's not an emotional, poetic statement. That is the Holy Prophet with his wisdom that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him, the wisest human that has ever walked this earth and will ever walk this earth, saying that this is an invitation from your Creator to you specifically, not just generally, but for a banquet. You're telling me Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim is holding a banquet? 100% I want to be there. Forget that, I want to be the one waiting at the door. Like at Wimbledon when they're queuing for days and days and days. I want to be queuing for that. I'm not missing out on that. Look how excited we can now suddenly become by just seeing this through initially a different lens. So Shaykh bin Nahyan, he uses this word or this concept as the banquet. He says, look, let's try and figure out, if we were to look at a banquet generally, what kind of themes do we draw from it? What happens to the guest? What happens to the host? What happens to the relationship between the guest and the host? What happens to the relationship between the guests? What about the relationship you had as a guest with your host? What happens to that now that you've been invited? What do you do as your mannerisms at a banquet? What does the host do when he sees you with certain mannerisms? And he really starts to paint a beautiful picture as to what this banquet should be about. And inshallah, by the end of this session, I hope you'll go home and say to your wife or your husband or to your family or to whoever and say, I can't wait to be a guest of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala this month. And inshallah, those who share it will be like, what on earth are you talking about? And you can guide them to this wonderful book by Shaykh bin Nahyan. Inshallah, if you want to go on this journey, please recite salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. So when you have a banquet, there are invitations. When you have an invitation, there needs to be guests that receive those invitations. Now, I'm sure we don't need to explain the analogy too much. We are the guests. Interestingly, when you think about a banquet and its guests, the guests are treated with utmost respect, love, whatever you want, it's happening. But just to illustrate how Islam talks about guests, we have a hadith attributed to the Holy Prophet, أَكْرِمِ الضَّيْفَ وَلَوْ كَانَ كَافِرًا. Honor a guest, even if he or she is an unbeliever. Inshallah, you're entering this month as a believer. The Prophet saying, even for an unbeliever, if they're a guest, honor them, look after them. Hospitality. If you're a believer, imagine. If you're a guest of Allah, imagine. Who is more merciful, Allah or the Prophet? It's not even a question that needs to be asked. But you'd imagine the Prophet's going to sort you right out if you're a guest of his. Now imagine if you're a guest of his Creator. And if the host of this banquet, let's say for argument's sake, we're going to go into a bit of a materialistic realm that I'm not massively supportive of, but let's use the analogy to help us, right? The richest of the richest member of the community has invited you as a guest. Let's assume that this host is incredibly generous. For them, spending $1 million on this banquet is just like, whatever, I've got $1 billion anyway. $1 million is like just a tiny percentile. Doesn't matter. For us, we're like, whoa, $1 million. This guy's going to go all out for his guests. For some of us, that's a chocolate fountain. For others of us, that's steak. It depends on which kind of part of it you're excited about, right? He doesn't think how deserving the guest of his is being served. Because if the host is wealthy, there's no need for the guests to be competitive with one another. Who's going to get what or whatever. They know there's enough. There's enough there for the taking. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we recognize He's infinite in every attribute. So none of us need to even worry for a second, is there going to be enough for me? There's no competition between each other. How many of us fall into competition in the holy month of Ramadan? How many of us during the a'mal of Layal of Qadr? So what did you do, Haidar? Did you do Josh and Kabir? Sorry, man. You didn't do that? Maybe next time, innit, bro? What's it to you? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has this unlimited mercy ready in this holy month to just distribute and distribute and distribute to his beautiful guests. Do we want it? Or are we saying, no, it's going to be too tough for me this year. It's too tough for me to be a guest of Allah. Not for me this year. I'm going to travel instead. Ya Allah, imagine. So let's have a look at this relationship now between the host and the guest. And this is a very special relationship, right? Again, you imagine you've now turned up as the guest. The host is there and they greet you firstly. It would be weird for them not to greet you, for them to welcome you warmly, perhaps to take you to your seat, to ask if you're okay. You know, just reflecting on that as we enter the first night of Shahr Ramadan, inshallah, Saturday night into Sunday. Just imagine this host welcoming you to the month. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala welcoming you into the month. How are you? Are you okay? How is everything? Think how you now spend that first night in Shahr Ramadan. Genuinely, the whole thing changes. You may not have had the best relationship with this host prior to the event coming, but that host still went out of their way to invite you. Said, you know what, despite everything that happened before, despite the arguments, the disagreements, the whatever that we've had, they still extend an invite to you. They still have that mercy in their heart to ask you to come back. Despite all of the issues that we've put in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, despite that we've committed every single sin under the sun in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you say, you know what, Sadiq, on this occasion, come back, let me bring you back. What a merciful Lord, what a loving Lord, what a great Lord. Come back, let me bring you back. The host ushers you to the chair. Allah ushers you into this month. Come and join me. The banquet started. They've invited you, right? Allah has invited you. You're his guest. And just in that moment, from where you were maybe disagreeing before, or you didn't listen to their command that they asked you to do before, or you failed the promise that you had with them, or the obligations that you agreed with them, in that moment when they've invited you and brought you back in, they're saying, look, it's a new friendship starting from fresh again. Don't worry about it. Come back. I want to see you again. I want to spend time with you again. I want to host you again. So suddenly this host no longer holds those grudges against that individual. Otherwise they won't be treating them with such love and respect. The host doesn't admonish their guest all of a sudden as soon as they arrive, right? They don't tease you in. Well, if they're horrible, then maybe they would, right? But they don't send you the invite, then you turn up, then as soon as you get in, then they berate you for all the issues. No, they'll come and be like, look, don't worry about it. It's fine. Just let's enjoy our time together. You're suddenly now in the safest of places. But the reality that some of us feel, especially when entering this month, is not just on the side of, oh, fasting is going to be long and whatever. Sometimes we do feel this kind of spiritual competition that's going on. You don't have to wait long until someone says, so how many chapters of the Quran have you recited? Sometimes those groups are like, how many Qur'ans are you reciting this month? You're like, bro, I haven't even done a quarter of one juz, so I forget how many Qur'ans. I'm struggling a little bit here, right? Or how many days off from work are you taking? Because you have to do ibadah all day. Oh, you're not taking time off? Well, that's a shame, Maybe next time you can do better. This spiritual competition for some reason begins, and it's really toxic. In some places it can be healthy, but largely I think people use it in the incorrect way. So sometimes we can find ourselves feeling a little bit low compared to others. The month comes in and we're like, yeah, you know what? I'm not spiritually on form. We learn from Amir al-Mu'mineen that hearts, they come forward and back. They fluctuate. Sometimes we're spiritually on form, sometimes we're struggling. So our status, for example, as we are heading to that banquet may be low. But once you enter this banquet where there are esteemed guests everywhere, even the lowest person's status is raised. I'm going to give you an example here just to illustrate this, right? I was on a business trip just before COVID, I think it was. So we have a very close relationship. There's a relationship between the British business embassy or whatever it is with the French Franco-British embassy. And because the business is French, there's a very close relationship there. So they invited from the top French companies in the UK, the leaders of those businesses, to go on a delegation to Paris. And for whatever reason, our co-founder couldn't make it, so he was like, you're up. And I was like, this is a bit weird. This is like for multi-millionaires. So just for as an example, the chairman of L'Oreal was sat next to me, and I was like, okay, this is really weird. So he's running like a multi-billion-pound business. I'm like, yeah, we're not quite there, bro. Sorry. You know? And he's like in his 60s, and I'm trying to get his son work experience out of place. It was a very bizarre situation, right? But anyway, we were received by the British ambassador to France in the home where the royal family go and visit, if they ever go and visit Paris. And it's right next door to Macron's, the president of France's, place in Paris. So really esteemed, right? Take your passports. They had a funny look at my Iranian visas, like it was all happening, right? So anyway, me being some 25-year-old guy at the time, just by being a part of this delegation, despite being the lowest guy in the room, you're treated the same way as the highest guy in the room, right? My status is raised. And again, that's not really a status to be proud of, but your status is raised. So some of us, we enter this month and we're like, you know what, I feel spiritually low. It's okay. Because once you enter this month, you're in the room, you're in the spiritual room of even the best of the best of the best guests of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And by virtue, you're raised as well. Everyone starts to come close together. And even if there's a distance between the guest and the host, the guest feels like he is even close to his host just by being present, despite what's happened before. So then we get into the month of Shahr Ramadan, and everyone's like, okay, you need to serve in the community. You need to cook iftar for people. You need to recite du'as for people. You need to recite Quran for people. There's so much that you need to do. And again, using this concept of the banquet as given by the Holy Prophet, we now start to see, okay, what is the context if a guest does something, if a guest serves in the context of this banquet? So imagine you're attending this banquet, and for some reason, whilst you're enjoying all of the food, you happen to be that guy who starts to bring all the plates together and puts the forks on the top and make sure it's all nice and tidy, right? Naturally, this host is so grateful for what you're doing because you're a guest, you're not required to do this. Such a guest would be thanked twice as much for the fact that even though they're a guest, they're still trying to help out, they're still trying to sort things out. But the beauty part is on the other side of it, that even if the guest doesn't do that, they're still praised by the host because they've attended, they're taking part, they're having fun. They're benefiting. They don't need to do anything. Just by being present, they're doing what's asked of them. They're being present. They're being a guest. They're being a grateful guest. If they do stuff, that's a bonus. But you can literally do nothing. But because you're a guest of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're honored. You're valued. And for some of you that may know, for example, when we say sleeping is ibadah in this holy month. Breathing is ibadah in this holy month. Because you're attending the banquet. The host is solely focused on one thing, and that is to make sure his guests are buzzing. They're having the best time. They're getting all the treatment that they need. Every single need that they have is fulfilled and alleviated. None of it is for his own profit. And when that host sees the guests smiling for what they're receiving, it fills them. It gives them great joy. And the host is always asking, have you had enough? And if not, and again on the assumption that the host isn't short of money or isn't short of talent, they'll bring you more, they'll bring you more, they'll bring you more. You ask, they'll bring you more. You ask for ice cream, they'll bring you 3 types. And I hope you can start to see this parallel with this banquet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's waiting for you to come and consume. Come and take spiritually, take what you want. Ask and I'll give you more. I want you to be satisfied. I want you to be happy. I want you to be buzzing for this. And if you just think about this for a moment, right? If the host of this banquet doesn't have any need from his guests, like he's not hosting it as a gala dinner to raise money for charity. He's purely doing it out of his own satisfaction, out of his own, in this case, qurbatan ila Allah ta'ala. If this host is doing it solely for the benefit of the guests, then we know that the only reason the host does this is because of the beauty it's going to create by serving his guests. We know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from our sessions on Tawheed is completely needless. So he's not doing it to satisfy himself, because he doesn't need to be satisfied. He's not measured in that way. So the only thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could be doing by hosting this banquet for us is to create value for us, is just to honor us and honor us and honor us. This is that same creator that continues to give you life and breath every day without you even saying thank you. And now he's saying, come and take what you want. Come, just come, just come. Imagine the mercy and the love that he's ready to hand out in this month. Oh, but it's such a difficult month. What? And then if we look at the context from being the guest of a really dignified person, just being that kind of guest makes us feel dignified too. It removes any humiliation from our soul. If this host is popular, lovable, even participating in this as a guest is like an unimaginable dream. So let's use this example. Let's say, for example, say the Sistani were to say, okay, those of you gathered here today, I would like you to come to my house so I can treat you for dinner. Think about how eager you would be the night before. You'd be thinking, what are you going to wear? What are you going to say to him? Are you going to take him a gift? All these things start to go through. You want to be a good guest, right? You don't want to be it says Sistani, like you don't want to be an ungrateful guest of the arguably best scholar of our time. That'd be awful if you just turn up unprepared and shabby and whatever. You'd be waiting at the door, eagerness, almost anticipating nervousness perhaps. And when that door finally opens, think about how glad and how gleeful you become. And that moment where he embraces you as a host would. They wouldn't say, yeah, get in. Right? They'd honor you. They'd love you. Like when you go to Thailand, I don't know if you guys have been for Thailand. I remember when I went on my honeymoon with my missus. We get to the hotel. They honor you as a guest. They give you like this nice mint drink. Oh, okay, very nice. They give you a brace. Oh, flowers, very nice. They take you around. It's very nice. They honor you. They look after you. That's what hospitality is, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is inviting you, is now opening the door to this month. Imagine how much mercy engulfs you in that moment. And how excited we should be for that moment. How eager we should want that moment to come. But despite all of these amazing benefits of a banquet, the realization is that it starts at 7 p.m. and it finishes at 11. It's finite. It's 4 hours long. It's 30 days long. We know it comes to an end. And again, I say this more than anyone. You get to fast number 26 and you're like, we're nearly there. We're nearly done. I think I can handle it. And some of us completely crack and we're like, someone's doing Eid tomorrow, right? I'm going to follow them. I'm going to travel to Brighton or Milton Keynes. I think Milton Keynes for Londoners is like their safe haven. I've traveled for Luton, I've traveled far enough to now not have to fast on this day. I need a break. We know that this banquet's temporary. 30 days, it's going to be up. It will come and go. All that sweetness comes and goes. So we need to know its value. We need to appreciate it. We need to be ready to seize the opportunity of it. If you associate a banquet with loads of food and a buffet, it'd be daft to go get a foot-long Subway before the buffet starts, right? Because you're able to seize the opportunity. The same way, are we going with our appetites ready to consume this spiritual energy? Or are we just going in like, oh, okay, here we go. And it kicks off. There's no time for negligence in it. Because you'll miss out. You just won't get the food. You'll miss it. But herein lies the opportunity for Shahr Ramadan. Once the banquet is over, and this part is beautiful that Shaykh Manahian explains, so pay special attention to this, right? Once the banquet is over, you arrived as a guest to the host. But some guests get so intimate and so close and build such a relationship with that host that the next time they're not seen as a guest. They're seen as one of them, part of the intimate ones. These are the guys who have made the most of that month. They become these lovers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They become the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They become part of this immaculate group who are as close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as we can ever get to. The near ones, if you like. The lovers, kind of, this kind of. So usually would say the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam are amongst the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Maybe the companions would be amongst the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it brings a new closeness that's now maintained. It doesn't just stop then after the banquet. But you could very much be like me. You're a guest for 30 days and you leave. Done. But some stick around. Some stay close. But some of us waste it and the year goes by. So what's the minimum benefit maybe that I can get out of this banquet? Let's say I don't prepare, right? And I've only got, frankly, for myself personally, I've got 2 days left to prepare. Friday, I'm at work. Saturday, I'll be tired. Sunday, and it begins, right? That's kind of the way I'm probably going to fall into Shahr Ramadan. So what's the very minimum benefit that I can get out of it? At the very least, you won't be alone during this banquet. You're not going to be sat by yourself. You emerge from this repetitive, monotonous, daily cycle and rat race of going to uni, of going to work, of sitting at home, of the same old repetitive stuff. And you enter something very special, something new. That even if you're not looking forward to it, maybe you're going to have a moment. Maybe a spark's going to happen because you're entering something special. So it's an opportunity in this banquet to have some level of enjoyment, to have some variety in your life, to meet the people who are dear to us that bring some level of relief and love to us. And this in itself is a spiritual benefit. Just attending and being amongst the brothers is a very spiritual benefit that we must take heed of. But of course, this all depends on what kind of banquet you're attending. Who's the host of that banquet? In the case of a banquet of someone who doesn't follow our dear faith and has organized the wrong kind of banquet, you'll have the wrong kind of people. But in the case of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the perfect of the perfect of the perfect and beyond, what kind of attendees are at that sort of banquet? How eager you are, your mannerisms, how much baggage you leave at the door before you enter. That's all down to you. You know the host is going to be immaculate. You know the layout's going to be immaculate. You know what's on offer is going to be immaculate. It just depends how you arrive into it, how embracing you are of it. And all this will dictate how you view this banquet of Shahr Ramadan. So as we mentioned earlier, there are some subtle things that even if we do them, we're told that we even get reward for this. So after the Prophet in this sermon of Sha'baniyah, when he describes the month as a banquet, he then talks about what is served, like what's on the menu, basically, of this banquet. And he's reported to say, God honors you in this month to such an extent that even your breathing is counted as remembering him. And your sleeping is counted as worship. Your deeds are accepted and your prayers are answered. As a human being, there's not much more that we can do without any effort than breathing and sleeping. Those are like the two most easiest things that we could do if we're given the rizq and tawfiq by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even the most basic of things, you're benefiting from the banquet. And of course, you're benefiting in a spiritual way. This is the goal of the banquet. So just some final reflections, inshallah. And as I said, I'm just trying to introduce this concept for you. So hopefully you go home and you're maybe starting to correct the negative view that maybe some of us get caught up in when it comes to this holy month. So maybe just some quick final reflections from Shaykh Panahian, and then inshallah we leave it there. Perhaps one of the goals of this month is that it's an opportunity for us to become familiar with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if it doesn't work for us, if Shahr Ramadan doesn't help us get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we need to ask ourselves the question, if not now, then what other banquet am I waiting for? What other moment am I waiting for? Because when I start to recognize my Creator, and when I start to recognize Him as the greatest and greater than anything else I'll do in my life, and I start to realize I prioritize my worship to Him above and beyond anything else, it's those tough decisions that I make day to day that make me a real human. Until then, I'm just a beast, wandering the streets, following my low desires. But when I start to make prioritization decisions and say, you know what, I am going to pray at this time because that is greater than this work. I am going to give this money because getting closer to Him through that is better than this car I'm going to buy, so on and so on. When we start to make these tough decisions, that's when I become a real human. So if the holy month of Ramadan is not going to be the catalyst, the moment where I start to make these decisions, where I start to become a real human, you have to ask yourself the question, okay, what other opportunity are you waiting for? I'd love to hear it personally, right? But deep down, some of us, we're like, yeah, I'll do it at another time. Like, this is the best of the time. If we're unable to experience being with the host during the banquet of which we're present at in His very house, then what other opportunity is there? We've got to gee ourselves up for it. At some point, it's on us to try. Bring our heads up and like, you know what? I'm just going to try this month. I'm going to give it a go. For those of us who maybe feel that we're a bit closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's not a decision between, oh, do I care or do I not? And maybe now it's, no, alhamdulillah, in the year I have been trying to get closer to Allah. I have been offering my prayers to a decent degree. I have been trying different things, whatever. Then maybe this is an opportunity to get that much closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To become more intimate with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You see, when we sin during the year, shaitan plays a dirty trick on us. As soon as we sin, especially for those of us who feel we're close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we sin, shaitan tries to go, that's it, finished, you're done. You're finished. Allah doesn't care about you anymore, mate. You're like me. Sorry, out you come. One mistake I made and I was out. You're like me, just join me, it's not worth it. The pub's worth it, the this worth it, the that's, everything, just leave it out. It's a really horrible trick that he plays on us. He tries to convince us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't care about us anymore, doesn't love us anymore, doesn't want to forgive us anymore. And we start to even believe it. We're like, one day you make that slip up, then the next day you're like, well, I've already made it, so I may as well just continue now, right? And you so quickly fall into a really tough rut, and something again brings you back up. And alhamdulillah, as the lovers of Ali Muhammad, we don't just wait for Shahr Ramadan. Actually, we have the birth anniversaries, the death anniversaries, many Eids, in fact, Thursday night du'as, Sha'ban, Safar, so all these opportunities to try and get back up. But at the end of the day, 1 month is coming round where no matter which part of the world we're in, there is an obligation on us, where every single Muslim has to follow this command, which is the holy month of Shahr Ramadan. So maybe if we're going through that slight dip, this holy month is that opportunity to springboard further. And if we're at a peak, amazing, we springboard even more towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because the environment of the banquet will help us correct our understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, keep us ticking and making us more hopeful about improving ourselves. And given that I think all of you guys have been attending the last few sessions quite regularly, I'm going to go into something a little bit interesting from a linguistical perspective, right? From an Arabic grammar perspective. And this will just show you the richness of the language, and especially given that this is the month of the Quran in particular, hopefully it's a month where if we are unable to read the Quran, we can try. And if we can read the Quran, we can perfect our recitation and become familiar with it. And one way to do that is to get familiar with the Arabic language, right? So Shaykh bin Nahyan puts this in such a beautiful way. He says maybe we're going to be muhtaram, honored in this banquet. Note the word muhtaram. And this could be so that we feel that we are more mahram. with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Intimate. So mahram being the intimate ones that you're close with, right? So maybe we're going to be muhtaram, honored in this banquet, so that we feel we are mahram, intimate with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Thus considering sins that we commit to be haram, forbidden for ourselves. Note the familiarity and the consistency between these words. Muhtaram, mahram, haram. They all have a common harama. The root word of Arabic comes back to here. So maybe we're going to be muhtaram, honored, so that we feel mahram, intimate, so we don't commit haram. And this is similar for those who go on Hajj. Because when you enter Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's house in Hajj, you enter the state of ihram. Again, the same root word is being used there. You now enter the state of ihram, where you become a muhrim, where certain actions now become forbidden upon you. You can't use perfume, you can't look in the mirror, you can't kill an ant, you can't do all these different rules. You enter this month before you've entered, you can do whatever you want within the bounds of Sharia. You now enter the month, and between dawn and dusk, you have very specific things on you. You are now a muhrim. You have obligations on you, where things are now haram for you. And by admitting to these and by observing these, you can become mahram to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You become intimate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which enables you to become muhtaram, intimate with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Honored, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So similarly, we're going to become muhrim when we enter this holy month. And we will not be mahroom, we won't be deprived of these blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look at all of this this is a very subtle linguistic point. So either I've lost you along the way or you're appreciating the subtlety of this. All of these words from the Arabic language coming from the same root, harama, about being intimate with Allah, about having these obligations on us, about removing any of these forbidden things that we can't do, so we become intimate and we can be honored, so on and so forth. The same, just like we see when we go on Umrah and Hajj, we now see as we enter this month, all of these obligations become upon us, and they enable us to get that much closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Perhaps this tells us that this is an opportunity to become mahram, intimate, to know the secrets, and to get that much closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It requires us to go through this journey to get that closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But because we don't often see ourselves as honorable, we don't go through this journey of trying to correct ourselves and be better. But this is a month where we're like, you know what? I'm going to give it a go. It's a special opportunity. And maybe this whole banquet, maybe simply, it's just that we don't feel distant from our host anymore. So we don't actually, in the other parts of the year, try and escape from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And maybe we're guilty of that. We've been running away from Him. We've been trying to ignore Him. We know we can feel that I need to be praying, but we're like, nah, not on this occasion. Nah, not on this occasion. But in this month, many of us will find inner peace. We'll find that solitude where we're no longer pursuing our lower desires. We're just with ourselves and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this line is a killer. God waited for us to go to Him during the year. But we didn't go. God waited for us to go to Him during the year, but we didn't go. We didn't fancy it. We prioritized this, that, and the other. Therefore, He's invited us, Himself, to try and create this intimacy with us and removing any concern from you that maybe you need to fear Him at this point in time. He's like, no, just come. Embrace my greatness. Just come and join me. You've been running the whole year. And He's like, no problem. I'm now asking you to come close. And hopefully this amazing memory that we have during this holy month, where we've had this intimate moment with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sticks with us for the rest of the year. When we think to run away, we're like, you know what? I remember that banquet. It was decent, you know. I'm not going to run away from that. I want to go back. I want to see if they're still open. I know it's 1 month later. I'm going to see if they're still open. I'm going to go back. And of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will welcome you with metaphorical open arms. So inshallah, I hope, and we'll conclude here, that rather than having this perception as we enter the month of, oh, it's going to be tough. Oh, it's going to be this. We're now seeing, you know what? I've got the invitation. You're here, alhamdulillah, you have the invitation. Just 2 days away, you have the invitation. Whether we make it to Sunday, I don't know, I can't say. But at least turn the intention and say, you know what, Allah, if this invitation is actually going to realize itself on Sunday and I will be entering this holy month, I'm getting ready from now. I know I'm late, but I'm getting ready from now. And I'm going to be knocking at that door to the venue. Because the moment you open it, I cannot wait to be embraced by your greatness. And he's a host, so he just wants to honor you as his guest. And inshallah, these are the teachings of our Holy Prophet, so we can benefit from them, we can be guided by him, we can reach through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through his intercession, the intercession of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. And as I mentioned, if you feel you would like to try and prepare to get on the right clothes for the banquet, to wear the right aftershave, just order it. 40 pages, 50 pages. It'll be done before you know it. And at least you can think, I've done something to prepare. And as we said, if the host sees the guest preparing, it fills them with such joy. In the case of Allah, it isn't filled with joy per se, but he'll bless you and bless you and bless you even more. Please don't forget one another in your prayers during this holy month. It really is something special. But primarily, we know that our dua is for our awaited Savior, so that he may bring about justice on this earth in the same way that it was filled with injustice and inequity. وآخر الدعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وعلى آله الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعلى يا الله.
زيارة ورثة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا وارث آدم صفوة الله، السلام عليك يا وارث نوح النبي الله، السلام عليك يا وارث إبراهيم خليل الله، السلام عليك يا وارث موسى كليم الله، السلام عليك يا وارث عيسى روح الله، السلام عليك يا وارث محمد حبيب الله، السلام عليك يا وارث علي أمير المؤمنين ولي الله، السلام عليك يا ابن محمد المصطفى، السلام عليك يا ابن علي المرتضى، السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء، السلام عليك يا ابن خديجة الكبرى، السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والبتر الموتور. أشهد أنك قد أقمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وأمرت بالمعروف ونهيت عن المنكر وأطعت الله ورسوله حتى أتاك اليقين. فلعن الله أمة خذلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الإسراء بشامك والأرحام المطهرة، لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك من مدلهمات ثيابها، وأشهد أنك من داعم الدين وأركان المؤمنين، وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرزي الزكي الحادي المهدي، وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وأعلام الهدى والأروث الوثقى والهجة على أهل الدنيا، وأشهد الله ملائكته وأنبياء رسوله أني بكم مؤمن وبيا بكم موقن بشراع ديني وخواتمي أملي وقلبي لقلبكم سلم وأمري لأمركم متبع. صلى الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم. زيارة علي أكبر عليه السلام. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا ابن نبي الله، السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا ابن حسين الشهيد، السلام عليك أيها الشهيد وابن الشهيد، السلام عليك أيها المزوم وابن المزوم. لعن الله أمة قتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. زيارة شهداء كربلاء. السلام عليك يا أولياء الله وأحباء، السلام عليك يا أصفياء الله وأوداء، السلام عليك يا أنصار دين الله، السلام عليك يا أنصار رسول الله، السلام عليك يا أنصار أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا أنصار فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا أنصار أبي محمد الحسن بن علي ولي الزكي الناس. السلام عليك يا أنصار أبي عبد الله أبي أنتم وأمي تبتم وتعبت الأرض التي فيها دفنتم وفزتم فوزا عظيما، فيا ليتني كنت معكم فأفوز معكم. جاءت أبو الفضل عباس. السلام عليك يا أبو الفضل عباس يا ابن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك أيها العبد الصالح المطيع لله ولرسوله. السلام عليك قد جاهدت ونصحت وصبرت حتى أتاك اليقين. لأن الله لكم من الأولين والآخرين والحقيكم بدرجك الجحيم. السلام عليك يا غريب الغربة السلطان يا أبو الحسن علي بن موسى رضا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا صاحب الزمان ألمان 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 من خلدة الزمان. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. أجل الله تعالى فرجه وسهلا تعالى مخرجه وزهوره. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. دعاء فرج. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كل وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك سوءا وتمتع فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. صلوات.